Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host of Fiberchats, and my guest today is the Red Cardinal himself, Dario Tubiano. Welcome to my channel.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you agreed to this interview. So you are a knitwear designer, but you started relatively recently, right? It's not like your whole life that you've been a knitter.
Well, actually, I have. I've been knitting since I was a kid because my mom, she's a knitter as well. So when I was a kid, I used to watch her, and I was very curious to see, when she was casting on all these
Right.
movements. That was something cool, and I wanted to learn. And she taught me, but then I sort of maybe it wasn't the right time. I was too young. I don't know, but I sort of stopped for a while. Then I've studied abroad, my university studies. And when I got back from Israel, where I've studied, I took a years off and I started again. And here I am. Yes.
So you started knitting, you learned the knit and purl, like the basics.
Yeah.
How do you go from that to deciding designing?
Well, it was, I like using a lot of colors. And I used to love the pacer. So, the yoked sweaters.
Right.
Here in Italy, 5 years ago, around 5 years ago, they were not that popular. And so I wanted to knit that kind of things, and I wanted them to be very colorful. And so I've played with yarn, with needles, I knitted a couple of things and stuff. And at a certain point, I wanted to create something because I wanted to use my colors. I wanted them to be more colorful. And so I tried. And that was really successful. I mean, I was very happy with the result. And lots of people wrote me that were very curious about this new design. And so, yeah. So basically, I began because I wanted to create something more colorful than what I was looking around.
Right.
I was seeing around, yes.
Well, let's talk about it. So, I mean, there are different kinds of knitters out there, right? There are people who learn to knit as children and they knit socks and hats and like little sweaters like all their life. They're comfortable with like certain techniques that they learn as kids, and this is what they do. Then there are those knitters that learn to knit at some point, but they're not even interested in, there's this show, American show called Seinfeld, and they go, men don't want to see what's on TV, they want to see what else is on TV, and that's why they flip remote all the time. So it's like there is this kind of knitters that they don't necessarily just want to learn to knit, they want to see every technique that exists.
Okay,
They
okay,
want to
got
learn new technique and new and like see something harder and harder. And I feel like you are that kind of knitter, because not only you going to do intarsia, which is like people terrified of intarsia, everybody thinks it's like the hardest thing out there, right? It has
it.
this reputation. Then you go and you do embroidery on top of intarsia, like you take it another notch up, right? Do you feel like you are that competitive in everything you do?
Well, yes, I think I'm quite competitive at everything I do. And yes, I like it, trying new techniques and learn something new. I don't think there's something really complicated in knitting. I think that people think that there are complicated things, but the bad truth is that things take time, which is different. They're not complicated. They just take a lot of time. So embroidery by itself is not complicated. It just takes time, and you need to take your time to do it. And the same is for intarsia, and the same is for color work, and the same is for flat knitting. I mean, everybody now likes knitting in the round because you just do not have, you don't have to purl, you can just keep going. And I actually like more knitting flat, not because I can purl, but because I can shape the garment in a more in a different way. in a more complete way. So yes, that's why I usually change technique and I try to do the best I can at each technique, and that makes me quite competitive at everything. Yes.
Do you think it's the same thing because you are like pretty accomplished pianist?
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you think, I mean, I know like every time you talk to a pianist, they always think there is like 10 other people that like way better and whatever. Like nobody ever feels like
Yeah.
they right there, right? But I mean, I've heard you play. You're really good actually. um, do you feel like it's the same idea? Because it's like playing piano is also like very similar to knitting in the sense that it takes time, you have to be patient, and you want to challenge yourself all the time. Do you feel like there is a lot of parallels for you between music and knitting?
Um, some, I'm not sure. I mean, in piano, I find very complicated things that not only takes time but takes technique. Thing which is quite different in knitting. I mean, knitting, well, you can learn the techniques, but it's not something that's going to take you like a week or so. In piano, when you come across a new technique, you really need to exercise and exercise until it, you know, until you make it your own technique. But usually when my approach to things is the one I kind of become obsessed with it. So if I begin something, I spend the entire day doing it for several weeks until I feel I have the full control on that thing. That happens when I play the piano or when I study a new piece. Same things, unfortunately, for the people around me happen when I knit. So I've been my knitting everywhere. And my mom, for example, when I was learning knitting, I kept on asking her every day, like, I don't know, 20 times a day, how do I do this? How can I make this? I mean, she was like sort of going crazy. It was like, Dario, calm down a bit, just work on this, don't work on that.
Right.
And but yes, I tend to become very obsessed with things I do. So that's
Well,
why
let's talk about your mom for a second. So you're doing all these very complicated sweaters now. There's like different shaping, different, like some of it is very avant-garde, some of it is like very classic looking, but with your own twist to that. When she sees like what you're doing now, what's her reaction to that? Like, was she ever knitting things like that?
she actually does. She's very we are a good team. I have to say that for a lot of time, she's just back and she's just been in the back office, and I wasn't talking about her, but she's always been present, and we've often talked about my design. When I have a doubt, I go to her and I talk to her, and she usually come up with great ideas. So she would knit them, and sometimes now I have a lot of work to do, and sometimes I prepare the full schematics drawing and the full pattern, and I give it to her, and she knits it for me. So we do it together, or I knit one sleeve, she knits the other. You know, sleeves are always the worst part in it. So yes, we work together. So she actually helps me a lot.
Right. Well, that's actually so sweet. So when you work on the new model, like how does your design process work? Do you think of a shape first? Do you think of like what's going to be the embroidery on the piece first? Like what comes first?
It happens that you mean something for work or something that I do for myself?
Well,
Because
tell me both. Is it different?
yes, it's different. So when I work, I usually receive a kind of mood board. So pictures and stuff. So I start sketching. I do my sketches. And for example, for the embroidery or for the color work, I don't really think about it too much. I just draw something, sketch, and I send that. Then when I actually have to realize the garment, I think about it. But I came to understand that the more I sit and think about what I have to do, the less I come up with an idea.
Right.
So it's really, I know that I have to do something. I try not to think about it. And usually at some point in the day, I have an idea. and that's a good idea. I can feel that's a good idea. So my process is sketching and then getting to do it and try to figure out who I want who I want to wear that garment, and how big I want something, what kind of shape I would like it to be. And then while I do it, I always try to correct something or to adjust, to fix my ideas in order to achieve something that I like.
So
And
how is it different when you do it for yourself?
yeah, when I do it for myself, I don't have a mood board. So I just have an idea and I start with that. And then I adjust it simply, but I don't have to sketch it. I don't have to worry too much, and it tends to be a more relaxed way of working.
Right.
Yes.
So when you do embroidery, right, you take the soluble
Yes.
paper, water soluble paper, you draw on it, you
Yes.
attach it to the sweater, let's say, and then you do the embroidery, and then you dip it into water, the backing goes away, disappears, and
Correct. And
right,
there's a big surprise. You never
right.
know it.
So do you freehand sketch it? Do you draw, like, are you that good at drawing?
Not really. I mean, I can draw now. I've learned to do it. I wouldn't say I'm good at drawing. Sometimes when I have an idea and I cannot achieve an excellent drawing or something that satisfies me, I take, I don't know, 10 other things and I put them together. So I cut them, I glue them together, and then I draw it over it. I have to say, and this is a good advice for everybody who would like to become a designer, that the iPad with a pen is really a blessing. It's really a saving grace, because if you have it, you can import any kind of image, you can really play, you can modify. So that's really going to help out a lot. So that's the secret, yes.
So how did you learn embroidery? Like, what was the first time you did embroidery? Who taught you?
Nobody. There was a very challenging one, because I've usually I tend to be I tend to risk a little bit too much, but so far every time went well. When I want to do something, I use an idea for a work, and I know that I have to do it properly. I know that I can't get it wrong. So under that kind of pressure, I usually learn a new technique. So embroidery, I did that way. I didn't know how to do it. I tried. I simply tried. I looked at several tutorials. YouTube was a good friend, and the lockdown. The lockdown was a great moment to do that, because I had a lot of time to do whatever I wanted to. Plenty of yarn at home, so I just started doing embroidery at that moment, and yes, it worked, and I was very happy about that.
So was there like ever any project that you now look back in like total horror of what you did there? Like, were there like big mistakes, something like major that like now you realize what you did looking back?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. At the very beginning, I was not really good at understanding the fit of a sweater. The more I've knitted flat knitting, the more I learned about how a sweater is supposed to fit. So several different measurements. So if I look back and I look at old sweaters, I realize that they were not so very well done. Now I can think and project and design things in a more accurate way.
Right. So I saw that like a lot of your designs are published in magazines.
Yes.
Tell me about the first time that happened. Like, how did you score that very first gig? How did you get that assignment?
That was quite a drama. So my first design, this magazine I work for has 2 pages, in which they show things that they find on the net and that they like. So they publish them just a picture saying you can find the pattern on Ravelry and blah, blah, blah. That's how they contacted me the first way. I was very happy. After a couple of weeks, I received an email asking me if I wanted to work as knitwear designer for them. And they send me the mood board and say, we can do this, you can send us a couple of sketches and stuff. I was very, very new at that kind of things. I had never studied fashion. So for me, I panicked, I totally panicked, because I didn't even know how to sketch. I mean, it was really, really, everything was really new to me. And anyway, I sent this submission with several sketches and stuff. And the first, that's what I was telling you before, the first design that was published was a huge brioche scarf. And when I did that, I didn't think that I was also supposed to make a schematics and a chart. And this scarf was completely with different two-color brioche, flat with syncopated brioche. So, you know, you needed a lot of attention to write the schematics and stuff. So it went well, and I was very surprised they actually took that scarf. But they basically contacted me and asked me if I wanted to work for them, and I tried, and it went well. They were happy.
Right. So you know how like people think about like when you play piano, right? You do it for almost like meditation. Like this is you in your own mind, you sort of like forget about what's going on in the world and you concentrate on the task at hand, right? And people always usually think the same about knitting, that this is your meditative, peaceful place where you create, where you enjoy the the same stitches and the same repetitiveness of the process, right? Do you ever get stressed over knitting or piano for this matter?
I actually get stress all the time. For me, knitting is really everything but relaxing, I have to say. The only moment I really enjoy knitting without stress is when I knit a swatch. So for me, swatch is not only the most important part of designing, but it's also the most relaxing moment. It is sort of stressful because now that has become a job. I have the deadlines, I have mails, it entails writing, develop sizing, think about writing up the pattern, thinking about pictures and knitting very fast, because after one sweater I have another one to do. So while I'm doing one, I'm thinking about the next one. So it's really sort of like stressful, and plus, as I told you, I tend to be very obsessed with things. So for me, it's getting up at 8 o'clock, beginning at 8:30, and finish at midnight, and doing all the same thing obsessively because I have to finish, because I want to do it, and because I like it. But all these things brings with it anxiety, sort of, or stress. So I don't find it very a peaceful moment, you know. Say so, yes. But I know that for a lot of people, it's really a relaxing moment when they can see it and just enjoy knitting. And that's why I understand people who tells me I enjoy knitting in the round, I enjoy a top down, because those kind of projects, you don't really have to think too much. You don't have to measure too much. I mean, you can really go with the flow and keep knitting, and that makes you feel more relaxed, in my opinion.
Right. Do you ever get frustrated just as an artist that you have this, like, it's a job, right? So you have to do what's gonna sell, you have to do what's expected of you. You can't I don't know if you can or cannot, but like, do you have time to just explore something that your fantasy gives
No,
you?
no, that's absolutely, that's a good point, a good question, because there are lots of moments during the year when I have all my planned work, my scheduled work, and it's scheduled for a couple of months. And I know that new things come out from the fashion world, and I would like to try them, especially embroidery. I would like to try them all, or but I don't have the time. That's very frustrating. As I told you, things takes time. So I don't have the actual time, the real time to sit and think about something else. I have all my work to do and I have to do it. And sometimes I would like to try new techniques, or I would like to try to do something, or to try a new embroidery over a new jacquard, and but I don't have the time, and that's when my mom comes in handy,
Right.
because I can ask my mom if for example, I want to try a new embroidery on a specific color work. I ask my mom to make me a swatch of that specific color work, so maybe I can take a couple of hours to try this new embroidery. So that's when mom comes in handy. But yes, it's very frustrating not having the time to do everything you have in mind, because you of course have things, and the frustrating part is also that you are working on things that you drew
Right.
last year, the previous year. So you're not really into those kind of things, because time has gone by and new things have come up. So yeah, that's
Well,
frustrating.
let's play this exercise just for like for the fun of it. Let's say time stopped and you have whatever, let's say a couple months where you're not missing any deadlines, nothing happening, right? And you have 2 months to just be you, be creative, do whatever you feel like. What do you think those 2 months would be looking like?
At the moment, I don't know, but I can tell you that that thing happened because when there was a lockdown here, we've been like with everything freezed for also magazines, because they couldn't photo shoot the sweaters. So everything just slowed down a lot. And so I had several months and a lot of yarn. So I, for example, knitted a sweater with a very detailed intarsia things. It was a big tiger. So I had to um, it was a very long project, and so I did that because I really wanted to try a very detailed intarsia and work my hands off. So I did that, and then I did other well, I did in my other design, which is called the Intrigo, which is a sweater full of cables, both front, back, and sleeves. um, when I have time, I like to try these kind of things in order to, um, yes, bring my skill up a notch, and yeah, I think that kind of things. If
Well, okay, so when those months happened, right? Were you stressed over it anyway, or did you actually enjoy the COVID lockdown because of that allowed freedom, or did you not appreciate it at the time that you had that freedom?
I did enjoy it because I was first of all knitting for myself and not for others, and I was really knitting something that I wanted to do very of that moment. I was thinking in that moment. So yes, I really enjoyed that period. Yes.
Right. Where do you find your inspirations?
Um, yeah, I don't think about ideas too much. I mean, I know that inspiration doesn't come by itself. So I usually go and see fashion shows in order to see what other designer created, and that's a first impact approach to the inspiration. After that, when I go out, so when I walk in my hometown or wherever I go, I try to look around. And looking around, if you look around yourself, you will come across a lot of things that can be recreated with knitwear. And it can be a fence, it can be a wall, it can be colors somewhere, and then nature. If you have problem with colors, I usually look at nature, because colors in nature are always very well composed. So you can't get it wrong. So yes, I usually look at things, but I don't look at things thinking this can be. I have to look for something that inspires me. I just say, okay, I look at things. They will come back to me when I need it. I usually let things come to me, or idea come to me, instead of looking for them. Because when I try to look for things, I usually have a hard time to come up with a proper idea.
Do you have like some sort of diary or like portfolio of where you store those images, ideas,
I
write it down?
no, I rarely take pictures also because I usually I don't have a very good memory. So I take picture, but I totally forget I took them. So they're totally useless. No, I don't have. When I have an idea that I know I like and I want to do, I sketch. I usually take my tablet and I sketch the sweater or whatever I want to make.
Right. So you mentioned you spent time living in Israel and you also like you've been in Japan multiple times, you travel around, right? How do you feel those countries, those cultures affect you as a designer?
Well, Japan is incredible from that point of view. From fashion point of view and architecture and culture, I mean, it's totally different from Italy and from the rest of the world, as far as I know. So it was really amazing, and they have a great knitting culture as well. So it's really amazing. I really enjoy that kind of that part of the world. And yes, I had a lot of inspiration because with colors, with shapes, because you meet a lot of people wearing different things and being themselves. I mean, it's very different from Italy. Italy tends to be very traditional, sort of. In Japan, you can meet any kind of person dressed in any kind of way. So that was for me extremely useful for my job. And Israel, let's say it is a little traditional. I used to live in Jerusalem, not even in Tel Aviv. Jerusalem is like the most religious city in Israel. And I used to study ultra-Orthodox Jews. I was very interested in their way of getting dressed, so their black hats and suits. Um, but about that, it wasn't helping me with knitting. Beside the fact that in Israel,
Like they have like the whole culture of embroidery though there, right?
yes, exactly. That's where I was getting the more Islamic side of Israel. It's extremely interesting because they have these incredible patterns of and drawing in any mosques and buildings, and they are amazing. Amazing. Also, the handwriting. It's like incredible. So um, that was cool.
Do you ever like feel that the world expects too much of you, that like there is this waiting of like, okay, what I'm gonna come up with next, what if my next idea is not gonna be that brilliant? Like, do you feel like there is expectation of you as a designer?
No, my ideas are always brilliant. No, no kidding, kidding. No, I don't have it. I mean, if I try to do whatever I like, and if people like it, I'm happy. It often, it not often, but it has happened that I've done something that people didn't really appreciate, and it happens, but it doesn't. I don't feel bad for that. You know, we're talking about fashion. We're talking about something that people wear, so it's really important to respect everybody's else taste. So everybody's taste. So it's cool. Yeah,
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Have you ever done something that you designed and you thought it was like absolutely your masterpiece, the best thing you ever designed, and it hasn't been received as you expected? Or on the other side of the spectrum, did something totally simple that you didn't much put yourself into and it was like a commercial success? Like, does that happen to you?
Yes, it happens most of the time because when I do something that I really like and that it's very, I tend to like really complicated stuff, things that you need to measure, that you need to think about. And as I said, people don't everybody, I mean, not everybody likes this kind of demanding knitting. So most of my embroidered garments are not so. I mean, everybody says, "Wow, it's beautiful." So complicated. I would never do that. On the other hand, I've done a couple of sweaters, very simple sweaters. One with just the detail of an English shoulder, and everybody liked it. Everybody appreciate that. So, and I was like, Mom, why are they liking it so much? I don't understand. I mean, it's so simple. You don't even need a pattern to do it. I mean, it's, and my mom told me, no, well, there are a lot of people who have no idea and they need a pattern and they buy it. So it's all right. So it took me a while to understand that kind of things. But it's good. It's good. I know that my embroidery is something complicated. So I know that a lot of people, well, I know that a lot of knitters do not know how to embroider or don't really like working with a needle. So I'm not expecting such a big feedback from that kind of sweaters, from that kind of work.
Do you
And
ever give like different options of a sweater? Like, let's say you do something with like very complicated embroidery. Do you give options of like sweater without anything, sweater with intarsia, sweater with intarsia and embroidery? Like, is there ever options of the same design, but
that
like,
was actually my idea at first. I mean, when you see a sweater with an embroidery, you always have to think that that sweater before the embroidery is the sweater without the embroidery. And my sweat and all the sweater with embroidery are perfect sweaters to be
worn, worn without it?
yes, it's, I mean, if you, well, yes, but beside that, if you want to work in tension in it, you can do it because it will not affect the tension. I mean, the gauge will remain basically the same. So you have a sort of empty sweater, that a pattern that, and you can do whatever you feel like doing it with it. So that was the idea. I mean, the embroidery is on top of it, but what you get is a pattern of a sweater, and on the sweater you can do whatever you want to it. And if you feel like embarking in something more complicated, there's the embroidery, and you can go for it.
So when people buy your pattern, right, and they knit your sweater, and you look at it, what do you feel? Like, is it always amazing? Is it sometimes like you're like, what happened to that sweater? Like, what's your reaction?
I have to say that sometimes I'm really impressed. But for a couple of months ago, or maybe more than a couple, I've designed this sort of denim jacket, which is not made of denim, is made of wool. And but it was sort of complicated, I have to admit. It was first of all, it was 3 panels, then there was the Latvian braid, and there were several. It was featuring several techniques, and I saw a couple of pictures of a few people who knitted that project, and that was extraordinary. I mean, they really did a great job, and I was quite impressed. Quite impressed. For me, it would be more complicated doing that than doing an embroidery, because that really is real and pure knitting. So you really have to love knitting and try new techniques in order to do it. And it was of course knitted flat. So you really have to love knitting flat also. So I was quite impressed, yes.
So when you're not knitting and you're not playing piano,
Oh God,
is
you're taking away everything from me.
there like anything else that people can like stumble upon you and see you doing?
Well, I'm usually eating, but it doesn't count, right? I hate cooking, but I eat a lot. Uh, and beside that, no, I usually my day is knitting and then moving towards the piano, playing the piano, and then moving back to my studio and then start knitting again. It's not really good for my hands, but it's really good for my life. It makes me
Let's
happy.
talk about your hands for a second. So you mentioned that, like we talked before, and you mentioned that it's taking its toll on your fingers between the piano and the knitting. So how do you deal with that? Do you have any advice to other people who might?
Yes, well, I have the advice I've been given, but in the beginning of this year, I had several problems and I had to stop for a while. And it was also because because of the lockdown. The lockdown forced us to stay home, so no gym, nothing. So that didn't help. But basically, yes, now I'm slowly learning to knit like 30 minutes and then stop, go to the supermarket or do something else, or doing washing the dishes, and then come back and knit at 30 minutes and stop, do some stretching. That is really good for your back, for your shoulder, for your arms and fingers. And especially before beginning playing the piano and knitting, because otherwise, after a while, I'm having problem. So I need to take it slower. Yes.
No, because it's like if you think about it, it's almost like sport. When you sit and you knit for 8 hours, this is like how repetitive injuries happen. This is, you're
Yes.
doing the same
Exactly.
motion like over and over again. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
like people might not think about knitting as a sport, but you know.
And especially, it's very difficult for someone who needs to stop, because especially when you do color work, you're gonna say, okay, no, this round, okay, no, I just need another round, and you keep going, and the time goes by, and after a while you realize that you've been knitting for 3 hours in a row, and that's not so good for your hands. And they need to relax a while. Yes.
When you knit, is there something on the background? Do you have TV, music playing, something, or you just concentrate on what you're doing?
No, I usually listen to Netflix. I have no idea what I'm watching or places or what kind. Now I'm watching something that happens, it takes place in a hospital, for example, but I don't know the name of that program. I don't know the faces, because I usually meet and I just listen. So I know the what happens in there, where we are, but I don't really focus on the characters because I don't remember them.
Well,
It's
that's
just
how I discovered audiobooks for myself because I used to be an avid reader and then I was like getting so much into knitting that like reading was taking backspace sort of. And then I was like, oh, like what if I listen to the books while I knit? And it's actually brilliant because you
lots
can.
of people do that as well. Yes, I know. I have a couple of friends who listen to audiobook.
No, it's
Yeah.
like totally new discovery over COVID for me. Like I was so against audiobooks because I was like, I want to hold the book, I want to feel the pages, in my hands. I want to read myself. And now I'm sort of, I'm getting like into it somehow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally understand that. Absolutely.
Right. Well, let me ask you about the food since you mentioned that you are a foodie. So, in my travels in Italy, the most surprising thing that I found was how regional the cuisine is. So, the very first experience was on my first night in Rome. I was meeting my classmate there in like a cafe in the hotel that we were staying. And I asked the waitress if they have cannolis, and she looked at me like I was completely crazy. And she was like, "Listen, you want a cannolis, you have to go to Naples." You know, um, do you find it like? Did you find it surprising leaving Italy? Like you came from a small town in Italy, then you lived in Rome, but like, did you find that when you traveled that it opened your eyes to like all the different foods and all the different cultures and how like do you miss that? Do you when you come back to Italy, do you miss that part of it?
Yes, well, when I travel abroad, I absolutely love to try their food. So I'm not someone who goes to Italian restaurant, for example.
Right.
So I really like trying new food, different food, weird food. So I have no problem doing that. So, and that uh, allow me allows me to let me try new things. So it's so yeah. When I come back, I collected a lot of new tastes that I would like to keep having, but in Italy we don't have. So yes, I like to explore new food territories. And when I come back to Italy, I would like them to be to to enrich Italy with this kind of taste, but it doesn't happen. And yes, I miss that kind of things.
So I
But
had this conversation. I had an interview with Suzanne Bryan, and
yeah,
Suzanne Bryan is a certified handmaster knitter, right?
huh,
And she has a YouTube channel where she's teaching all the techniques, all the tips of how properly knit and all that stuff. And we had this discussion of cooking versus baking.
okay,
And so as I told her that I love cooking, I really don't like baking. And she was like, for me it's like the same thing. I like bundle them together, and I said no, 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 they're totally different, because when cooking you can like put a pinch of this and a pinch of that and a little bit of this. You have like this whole artistic freedom, right? Whereas baking is like a science experiment. It has to be precise temperature, precise
Yeah.
amount of sugar, flour, like you name it, right? And then I said like, but then when it comes to knitting, I'm probably more of a baker, because I usually follow the pattern. Like I have this, fear of messing up stuff and
Yeah.
experimenting with stuff. But you are a cook when it comes to knitting, right? Because you like to throw like a bit of this and a bit of that and experiment with different textures and.
Yes, yes, I appreciate the fact of knitting and that you can always unravel and start again, which is a privilege that doesn't happen often in life, especially. So with knitting, whenever you make a mistake or whatever, you can come back and start again. So yeah, I'm totally cooked on knitting.
Do you
Absolutely.
have like do you like different textures, different yarn, combining different yarns, combining like different thicknesses of yarns, or
Yes,
are
yes.
you can.
I don't do it much, but yeah, it's something that I like. I like to create a sort of textured sweaters with different stitches and also different stitches made with different yarns. When I began knitting, I remember that there was this kind of I mean, people would tell me that no, you cannot use two different kind of yarns together. And but after a while, I thought, why? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, of course, I would not use acrylic yarn with cashmere. Okay,
Right.
but I like combining things, especially and when I started embroidering, that made still even more sense. Yes, I like using different yarn. It creates wonderful effects. For example, I worked for Benetton, and I remember that for my collection, I used a very clean yarn together, and in some spot and in some other parts, I used just mohair. So and brushed mohair. So it was extremely cool because there were very clean parts and very hairy parts, and that was a great effect. So it's
Actually,
full.
like let's talk about that show. So you have on your Instagram, you have that runway, people walking in your collection, showing your collection. How did it feel to see your work on that runway?
I was very scared. I wasn't relaxed as well. No, it was very scary and very. I was very proud, very happy because I could really. That was the first time that I followed from the very beginning to the end an entire process. Um, and I liked the things that I was showing. So I felt they were really myself. My DNA was in them. So I was very happy. However, it was very scary. I mean, you always it's just like to take your heart and put it out there for everybody to be seen. So I'm not someone who likes. I mean, I'm sometimes very scary of judgments or people telling me things. So that moment I felt very exposed, but I managed because I was happy with what I had done. So it's cool. Yeah, it's
It was
amazing.
beautiful. It was like really eye-catching. Like I love that collection. Um, so what are you working on now? Like what's happening in your life now, and what's your plan for the next year?
Oh, and this moment is really crazy. I'm super full. I have a lot of things. There is a new that I can't talk about, but that's going to happen here in Italy. So we're working on that. I'm working for some sweaters for the next season for the magazine, and next week it's going to take place a very important event here in Italy, which is called Abilmente, which is a craft fair, and I'm going to stay there for the for 4 days and sort of giving advice on some yarn and some brands, and that's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. Um, but it takes a lot of work, so I'm really doing a lot of things. I'm doing samples, I'm knitting sweaters. Before going there, I have to have the pattern done of all the sweaters. So it's really a hectic moment.
And you also do classes, right?
Yes, yes. At the moment, I'm teaching. I'm working for the YED. YED is Institute of Fashion Design. Let's call it translated that way. And in Milan, and I teach knitting and embroidery. So that's really cool. You know, when you have your student and you have to try to teach them how to knit, how to purl, how to do several stitches, and it's cool. I mean, it's. I think it's very important for a fashion designer, even for someone who will never knit in life. I think that if you work as knitwear designer, it is extremely important to know something handmade, to know how to do something handmade. Not because you're going to do it, but because that helps you realize how much time it takes doing it, and that also justifies the price. So it's really cool, man. I mean, my students are really cool.
What's your like absolute favorite thing about being a knitwear designer, and what's your like least favorite thing about being a knitwear designer?
Oh, that's a tough question. I'm doing what I like, so I think that's the best thing. The worst thing is I think that you're always on the run. I mean, it's tiresome, and you're always looking for doing that, contacting that person, and you are sort of on your own. And if you do everything with your hands, it's going. I mean, you can do until a certain amount of things. After that, you have to say, no, I'm sorry, I'm full, I can't do it. So that's the downside of this job.
Right. Well, I can't wait to see what else you're coming up with. I love watching your new stuff and like seeing your, imagination at work. And, I wish you all the best of luck and thank you so much for being my guest today. Really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thank you so much. It was really cool question, cool interview.
Thank you.